Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1664B, and today's date is September 14th, 2018, and the title of the episode is The Deep State Prepares Counter-Narrative, Truth Will Win. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, we understand at this point the deep state, they're in panic mode because we know the Moab is going to be dropped and they're nervous and afraid. But that doesn't mean they're out and they're just going to sit back and take it all. They are preparing counter narratives. And we're going to explain that in a little bit because what we are seeing right now, they are preparing to counter what is about to come out. And we can see that they're not just going to sit back. They're getting prepared and ready. Now, of course, this might happen in many different ways, but we can see the first wave coming, and we'll get into that in just a minute. But I want to talk about the banning of the Reddit sites and many other sites, and Q has been telling us that this is just the beginning. There's going to be Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and whatnot, and they were using Alex Jones as a template to push this banning forward. And we know that Jeff Sessions right now is initiating a probe into all of this. But out of big league politics, they've come across that Jessica Ashu is believed by some to be responsible for the account Arab Scarab, which has been leading the charge to shut down the QAnon movement on the Reddit platforms. The Great Awakening, the second largest pro-Trump subreddit, was banned Tuesday, as we know, in a move that has rocked the online community. Now, there were more than 30 covert actors that have been identified in the censorship plot, which includes posing as Trump supporters to post intentionally offensive content and flagging it. So they would post something, and then they go ahead and they flag it. Some of these activists are linked to Media Matters and the ACLU. An employee of CBS has been identified as a member of the plot, but denies involvement. And top Reddit moderators continue to investigate the network of activists who are executing Ban Out 2018 and assault on Trump supporters. Now the question is, who is Jessica Ashu? Well, she right now oversees Reddit and is a veteran of George Soros' Atlantic Council, where she served as a deputy director of the Middle East Strategy Task Force as recently as the spring of 2017 when she moved to Reddit. Now, the January 2017 David Brock meeting in Florida, where he laid out a social media censorship plan, kicked off a period of Silicon Valley aggression against the American people at just the time Ashu was transferring from the Atlantic Council to Reddit. The Atlantic Council now works with Facebook to police independent news content on Zuckerberg's social media platform. Now, the number of boards that were shut down on Reddit are quite a lot. I mean, we have Reddit QAnon, the GA, TGA, Calm Before the Storm, Where We Go On, We Go All, Qspiracy, Great Awakening, A Great Awakening, The Calm Before the Storm, Great Awakening, Gmods, Patriot Fight. I mean, there were quite a few that were shut down all at once. Now, what's very interesting is that we know these social media platforms, they've been shadow banning, they've been banning, and now they're starting to remove words that they deem hateful. And we can see this on Twitter. The term illegal alien, now that is enshrined in federal law and U.S. Supreme Court opinions. And Twitter has deemed illegal alien hate speech. Now, the Center for Immigration Studies said Twitter rejected 4 tweets for use in the organization's Twitter ads campaign. Why did they reject them? Well, because they had the word illegal alien or criminal alien. And they're saying that this word now is hate speech. But if you look at federal law, you see illegal alien all over the place. It's used very commonly. And CIS said Twitter's only response to an inquiry about why promotion of the tweets was rejected was, we reviewed your tweets and confirmed that it is ineligible to participate in the Twitter ads program at this time based on our hateful content policy. Violating content includes, but is not limited to, that which is hate speech or advocacy against a protected group. So someone who comes into the country illegally, we cannot call them illegal aliens. This reminds me of the movie The Giver, where they had precision of speech, where they weren't allowed to use certain words for certain things. And people didn't know what the meanings were for certain words. I mean, they didn't even know what an elephant was or a giraffe, because their whole entire idea around speech was taken away. This is what we see happening right now, because soon you won't be able to say the word illegal. So they started banning. Now they're banning words. This is just getting worse and worse as time goes on. Now, this is how the deep state is trying to fight back. And Q has told us that they're going to fight back. But what we see happening here is there's more and more evidence coming out against the deep state operatives, against what they've been doing. I mean, look at the leaked Google video. Look at all the leaked information coming out of Strzok and Page and Bruce Orr, Nellie Orr, about Obama, Clinton. Now, Sarah Carter reported, new emails between former FBI lover Strzok and Page reveal that the FBI officials used unsecured devices to discuss sensitive information. Judicial Watch announced Thursday that it has received 47 pages of Department of Justice records from a January 2018 filing, and U.S. District Judge Reggie B. Walton ordered the FBI to process 13,000 pages of documents of communications between Strzok and Page. However, as the watchdog organization points out, the FBI refuses to timely process the records and will not complete review and production of all the Strzok Page material until at least 2020. Now, Judicial Watch writes, in a January 30th, 2016 email exchange sent entirely over unsecured devices, top former FBI officials, including General Counsel Jim Baker, Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, Strzok Page, unidentified individuals from the Department of Justice National Security Division, and NSA General Counsel Glenn Gerstel discuss a draft document with the subject line, Revised IC Safe Harbor Letter from Redacted using Redacted iPad. And this is how the conversation went. Baker notes in the exchange that he is attempting to work on the document using his smartphone. And he went on to say, so it is not possible to read the red lines on my smartphone. If you are still at the office, can you please save the red line version as a PDF and then resend? Thanks. Also in the exchange, Strzok writes to Page, and God, MIT, given everything going on, why is Redacted using a Yahoo account for this? Actually, apparently, a Yahoo account from Redacted's iPad. Make him stop. So we see at this point that all these different emails, these text messages, they're all coming out. Now, Judicial Watch is getting a lot of them, but where are the other ones coming from? Who's feeding all of these text messages out into the public? That's something that we need to think about. I mean, really think about this. We know that Judicial Watch has been getting quite a bit, but they've been stonewalled on a lot of it. So where are all these text messages coming out of? Maybe the investigation with Horowitz and Huber, and they're releasing a little bit at a time to get the public used to this? Maybe. We see the House Judiciary Committee approved a bill on nationwide injunctions. Let's see what this is here. The House Judiciary Committee today approved the Injunctive Authority Clarification Act of 2018, H.R. 6730, by a vote of 14-6. This legislation, sponsored by Chairman Bob Goodlatte, restores the traditional understanding that a federal court's injunctive power extends only to the protection of the parties before it. House Judiciary Committee Chairman Bob Goodlatte applauded today's approval of the Injunctive Authority Clarification Act with the following statement. The Constitution gives courts the authority to decide cases for the parties before them, not to act as super legislators for everyone across the country based on a single case. It simply cannot be the law that opponents of government action can seek a preliminary injunction and lose in 93 of the 94 judicial districts, win one injunction in the 94th, and through that injunction obtain a stay of government action nationwide despite it being upheld everywhere else. A bipartisan group of some of Americans' leading professors of remedies, federal courts, and administrative law agree that Congress must enact a limit on national injunctions. I am pleased that the House Judiciary Committee today approved the Injunctive Authority Clarification Act of 2018. And here's a little bit of a background of all this. For the first 170 years of the Republic, there were no national injunctions precisely because courts recognized that they would go beyond the judicial power. Since then, there has been a gradual evolution that allowed the practice to avoid careful constitutional scrutiny until now. In June 2018, after examining the basis for national injunctions, Justice Thomas Concurrence in Trump v. Hawaii concluded that in sum, universal injunctions are legally and historically dubious. If federal courts continue to issue them, the court is duty-bound to adjudicate their authority to do so. National injunctions create what the Justice Department terms an absurd situation in which a plaintiff only needs to win once to stop a national law or policy, but the government needs to win every time to carry out its policy. That makes governing all but impossible. This creates a shop till the statute drops problem. Now, an anon took what happened today and had a theory. And here's the theory. Remember back in March 2018 when President Trump signed the omnibus spending bill, and many of us freaked out because we didn't understand what happened. We incorrectly thought a spending bill was the same as a budget without realizing that spending bills are discretionary, which means Trump is basically free to ignore the projects listed in the bill and use as much of the money however he likes, and unused allocations are returned to the Treasury. Remember how Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi celebrating having budget allocated but not approved for all their ridiculous liberal projects. Look how happy Schumer and Pelosi were at the time. Meanwhile, Q posted 963, with many researchers believing Red Castle to be reference to the Army Corps of Engineers, whose logo is Red Castle JPG, and who are located in Greencastle, Indiana. Then President Trump mentioned that he can build a wall as a military project. That wiped the grin off Schumer's face when he realized his win was actually a massive loss. So Schumer threatened Trump with endless, frivolous lawsuits to obstruct the border wall forever. And today, General Sessions releases memorandum on litigation guidelines for national injunction cases. So Jeff Sessions' litigation guidelines are intended to primarily stop Chuck Schumer's legal obstruction of the border wall, but also deal with those pesky Ninth Court Circuit judges and Obama's Hawaiian buddy who attempts to obstruct everything by frivolous overruling cases far beyond their pay grade. I suspect Q will once again be proven correct when President Trump fully funds the border wall as a military project to be constructed by the Army Corps of Engineers. Now, in releasing the litigation guidelines, Sessions provided the following statement. Increasingly, we are seeing individual federal district judges go beyond the parties before the court to give injunctions or orders that block the entire federal government from enforcing a law or policy throughout the country. This kind of judicial activism did not happen a single time in our first 175 years as a nation, but has become common in recent years. It has happened to the Trump administration 25 times in less than 2 years. This trend must stop. We have a government to run. The Constitution does not grant to a single district judge the power to veto executive branch actions with respect to parties not before the court, nor does it provide the judiciary with authority to conduct oversight of review policy of the executive branch. These abuses of judicial power are contrary to law. And within these new guidelines, this department is going to continue to fight them. So what's happening here is they're creating these guidelines to overrule what Obama set up, what the deep state set up to try to overrule the government. Now, we can see that the deep state right now, they've been fighting back quite a bit. They're using everything in their arsenal to fight what is coming. And it looks like they are preparing for the Moab. And look what has been happening since this has been building. We know that they've been using fact checkers. That didn't work out because, again, who's fact checking this? A lot of the Snopes and all the other fact checkers are controlled by the intelligence agencies, and they're looking at their news stories and saying, no, whatever you're saying is false. But if you go beyond that, you can see that, no, these things are true. So now what they're doing, or Facebook is doing, and probably Google and YouTube and the rest, they're going to be fact-checking photos and videos. Facebook announced that the expansion of their fact-checking army, they're going to send photos and videos to all of our 27 partners in 17 countries around the world after using an artificial intelligence which will use various engagement signals, including feedback from people on Facebook to identify potential false content. The company says that because people share millions of photos and videos on Facebook each day, it creates an easy opportunity for manipulation by bad actors. So they're going to use this AI, and if the AI can't figure it out, it's going to go to a real person to say if this is real or not. Now, Facebook is going to categorize photos and videos, misinformation, into 3 categories: manipulated or fabricated, out of context, text or audio claim. These are the kinds of false photos and videos that we see on Facebook and hope to further reduce with the expansion of photo and video fact-checking. So how does it work? Similar to our work for articles, we have built a machine learning model that uses various engagement signals, including feedback from people on Facebook, to identify potentially false content. We then send those photos and videos to fact checkers for their review, or fact checkers can surface content on their own. Many of our third-party fact-checking partners have expertise evaluating photos and videos and are trained in visual verification techniques such as reverse image searching and analyzing image metadata, like when and where the photo or video was taken. So they're going to use these fact checkers. Now, you're probably wondering, why am I bringing this up? Go back to Q's posts where they said they have live video, live streaming video of Obama. If you go further back in Q's posts, they have pictures of Obama in Kenya garb holding an AK-47, and also Obama in pictures where he was in Kenya going to school there where he's not an American citizen. And there's many other instances of all of this. They also have Clinton on the tarmac speaking to Lynch, and we can see that they're getting ready and prepared to counter all of this. They're going to try to debunk what the government's going to put out. Now, before you say, well, that doesn't sound like they're going to do this, we're already seeing in the mainstream media headlines like this: the U.S. government is no stranger to fake news. It used to publish it. This is coming from Business Insider. And they're going back in time. In the early 1900s, the U.S. government published false documents that fueled the mounting Red Scare. Now, of course, they're not going to bring up the fake news about Syria, about 9/11, about Iraq, about Afghanistan. They're going to go back further in time because, they don't want to show that there was fake news there. But the whole point of this is they're trying to make the case that the government has used fake news before. And the article goes on to say that in the early 1900s, the U.S. government published false documents that fueled the mounting Red Scare. Unbeknownst to the government, the documents were forgeries. The publication of the documents was a case of the government accepting false information because it helped justify its actions. So basically what they're saying is that the government received documentation, they went with it, and they didn't know it was fake. Well, what's going to happen? We have the investigators investigating. They're putting together all this information. There are pictures, there are videos, there's actual documentation, and they're building the narrative. They're trying to counter it by saying this stuff could be fake because look what happened in the past. Now, Facebook and probably Google and YouTube, they're going to most likely try to debunk these pictures, rip them apart. So they don't have to do it fully. All they have to do is question it to make people say, well, is it fake? Maybe it is. And that's how they're trying to counter all of this. But I'm sure Q and those preparing all this have the originals where they can't be debunked. And they can show that, no, this was the original. This is the original video. This is the original picture. And debunk what they're trying to do. But we can see that the deep state, they're going to try to counter everything that's going to come out. And I believe this is going to be phase 1. And then we're going to be moving into phase 2 as more and more information comes out. And then eventually have the event of all events because they're going to totally lose control because truth will always win. You can't knock the truth. You can try with propaganda, but propaganda has nothing to back it. That's the problem here. Just like all these fact-checking sites, they're losing the war here because they're being debunked with their fact-checking. It's not working. People aren't believing it. That's why Google stopped doing it. That's why Facebook, you don't really see it that much anymore. They stopped doing it because people weren't paying attention. So what did they end up doing? They started to ban those sites that were pushing out the truth. They started to shadow ban. They censored. This is how they try to control the narrative, but they're not going to win. We see the Iraqi prime minister. He is not going to seek a re-election after protests. And we see that a lot of these leaders in all these Middle Eastern countries, after regime change, these leaders popped up. And of course, they were approved by the deep state. And of course, we know the elections were fixed to get these individuals into office. This way, the deep state can control them. These individuals are seeing the writing on the wall, and they're realizing it is time to get out. And this is exactly what we're seeing. We see Trump right now. He has slammed John Kerry. And we know that John Kerry went over to Iran trying to convince the Iranians to keep the nuclear deal. And basically, John Kerry said, listen, just wait it out. Trump will no longer be in office, and we can continue with our operations. Now, do you really think Kerry is over there because he's very concerned about the Iranians developing a nuclear weapon? Or is he over there trying to protect all of those that have done things illegally, where they had payoffs and other things, trying to protect and stop what is about to happen? But Trump came out and he tweeted, John Kerry had illegal meetings. Notice the word illegal, because he broke the Logan Act of 1799. Illegal meetings with the very hostile Iranian regime, which can only serve to undercut our great work to the detriment of the American people. He told them to wait out the Trump administration. Was he registered under the Foreign Agents Registration Act? Bad. Very interesting that he mentioned that, because isn't this why Manafort was brought up on charges and Podesta retroactively registered as a foreign agent? So is Kerry, as a citizen, registered as a foreign agent? And also, why did he violate the Logan Act? What was the purpose of all of this? We know what the purpose is. He's trying to stop what is happening here, trying to cover everything that they've done that was illegal. We see Syria right now is going to be opening the border with Jordan. It was closed and during the war. And we see now it's going to be open again, and they're going to start trade with Jordan. We see that the French foreign minister is warning that if Russia and Syria go in and bomb Idlib, it's going to allow the terrorists to scatter to many different areas. Now, think about this for a second, and let's use some logic. Think about all the other towns, cities that were liberated in Syria, where the Islamic State were there, al-Nusra, al-Qaeda. A lot of these paid mercenaries just surrendered. Some of them were even picked up by the coalition forces and transferred someplace else. And many of them were destroyed, killed in battle. And were they a risk? Because think about it. If you're in this country and the Syrian and Russian forces are surrounding you, where are they fleeing? They are captured. So what they're very worried about, and they keep bringing this up, is that if Russia and Syria go into this area, there is no reason for France, Germany, the United States, the UK, for the coalition forces to be in Syria. They're very worried about this, not about the paid mercenaries. They know who they are. They're worried about their control over Syria. And if Syria falls and they lose complete control, which they already have, they think by holding on to Idlib, they might have a chance later on to regain control of Syria. It's not going to happen, because we can see right now between Trump, the United States, and I'm not talking about the deep state, and Russia going back and forth saying, you better not do this. It's a humanitarian crisis. It reminds me of North Korea. They're getting prepared and ready to go in and liberate this whole entire area. And this is why it's all building up to this point. This is why the deep state is very worried that they're going to go into Idlib and liberate the entire area. Because once this is done, it is game over. Think about what the Syrian forces, the Russian forces have done. They have captured and liberated most of the country. And the people there, with reporters on the ground now, are speaking out saying it was horrible under the paid mercenaries. We were tortured. We couldn't live. This is why we left. And think about it. Everyone is coming back now. All the refugees that left want to come back. Why do they want to come back? If Assad gasses his own people, it makes no sense. If we use logic and we go back in time, we know that the deep state, with Obama and the rest, they created these paid mercenary forces to take over each and every one of these countries. Basically, they tricked the American public. They created a terrorist force, and they scared the American public that these terrorists were coming after us. And who were the terrorist force? They were paid mercenaries controlled by the intelligence agencies here in the United States, in the UK, in Germany, in France. And the jig is up. Russia now is speaking out. China is speaking out. Syria is now speaking out. They're pointing the finger of who's been controlling all these paid mercenary forces. And once this is all said and done, guess what? Syria will be under control of Assad. The coalition forces will no longer be needed in this country because the paid mercenary forces would have been wiped out. So what do? They have to leave. And Russia and Syria will make them leave. They will go to the UN. The UN will rule. And they'll have no option but to leave. And Trump will make that announcement. And the UK will say, we're removing our troops. Germany will say, we're removing our troops. France will say, we're removing our troops. And before you know it, Syria has taken control of their own country. And the troops are coming home. We're seeing the last part of it play out. I know a lot of people are like, well, we're still supporting Al-Qaeda. Yeah, the deep state is. It's not the military. They're not supporting Al-Qaeda. The deep state is in there. There's unidentified helicopters and things moving Al-Qaeda around. This is the deep state. This is the intelligence agencies. They're moving their paid forces all over the place. Eventually, they'll be moving them out of the country. Because we can see that it's all about to go down. Listen, everyone. Thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.